Good evening, everyone. This is Patricia Bryan tuning in with you for another episode of Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan. If anyone who knows me very well, I'm in love with disclaimers, so it would not be sensible of me not to stick mine in here. I want to expressly share that I am not an attorney and do not practice law, nor provide legal advice. The show is expressly for informational purposes only, and any information I share personally is from experts, my own research, and personal knowledge, and is being passed on as such. As usual, before I start, I'd like to encourage everyone to find a nonprofit organization of your choice and either donate your time or donate funds to help that organization continue to function and offer the services that they do. I want to take this time before I begin the show to publicly express condolences to Dr. Frank McField and family for the passing of Miss Onisha. Our families were very close as I grew up, and she was a grandmother type figure to me and many others, especially around the Schoolhouse Road area. Also to the Hugh family for Miss Valda's passing. She was a relative, but also someone who played a part in a small part of my life many, many years ago. Regrettably, I was not able to make it to the funeral, but I pray all went well and the families and loved ones will focus on the memories and the great things these two women did in the lives of so many and the community on a whole in the Cayman Islands. And knowing that both women were iconic in their own respects. If you missed Friday's episode, for the record, jump onto their channel on YouTube where you will watch MPs Miss Heather Bodden, Minister Sabrina Turner, and Deputy Premier Juliana O'Connor Connolly. I caught the last few minutes, but the reason I mentioned them on here is because I felt my chest push up with pride to see three female parliamentary members on the show together. I looked for House Speaker Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes. I hope she doesn't kill me. I hope neither of these women kills me to broadcast this on the show, but only to realize Speaker Kathy Ebanks-Wilkes was not present. However, after the slight disappointment passed, I realized she likely would not have been included due to her neutral and impartial position in any case. Speaker Ebanks-Wilkes, you were missed. Regardless, I enjoyed the presence and topics discussed by you ladies. Next time you are all on, I hope you will delve into more topics. Plus that time will be on Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan. You've had enough now, Mr. Connor. Before I get any further, again, I would like to express congratulations to our, congratulations to our new Miss Cayman Universe, Miss Ilian Powery. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, on her win of Miss Cayman Universe last Saturday night. I was not at the show, but I figured she would have come away with the win from the observations over the past few weeks of watching the candidates. Congratulations to all of the candidates that took part in the pageant, and I think you all did very, very well. And hopefully, Miss Powery, just as the previous Miss Powery, will go on to represent the Cayman Islands as we have always known our ladies are capable of doing. I trust everyone had an enjoyable weekend, did not incur any traffic violations or criminal charges. I noticed law enforcement had a strong presence around Georgetown, Red Bay, Prospect, and West Bay Road, as is usual for the weekend and end of month for traffic police. It would be thoughtless of me not to also express thanks to the veterans in radio and media land who have allowed me, Patricia Bryan, the use of their platform to inform of this show, Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan. Ralph Lewis, Caymanian Times, Cayman Conversations, Miss Anita Khan of Radio Cayman's Business Buzz, Cayman Moral Roads, The Cold Hard Truth, Sandra Hill, for the acknowledgement and infomercial over a week ago. I also want to shout out to my friend Catherine Tyson Sewell. Catherine, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, on her new talk show, Friday Night Wind Downs. wind it down. Aside from the business buzz like myself, the other programs are also a part of the DMS Broadcasting Bobo 89.1 family here at Bobo 89.1. Link all of these talk shows or these shows on dmsbroadcasting.ky and tap the Bobo icon to listen to each of our shows at the respective times. Especially though Mondays at 5 to 6 p.m. Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan. The first official solo show with myself and no guest would not be informative without revisiting the shows for the past 2 months and giving a submission. I am thinking that will refresh listeners and let others know what has been missed. So far, air shows were with Miss Laura Penades, a professor of the Truman Bodden Law School, sharing her learned history of the school along with applying and attending the school. She also shared pertinent information about programs and classes. Then we had law students Kimberly Russell and Velasca Borden Castillo from the law school sit in on the second show, sharing their personal experiences as students at the Truman Bodden Law School. I really enjoyed sitting down with those two ladies, as I did with Laura. Quality Law's director and attorney, Ms. Christine Bodden, and director Juliet Fenn discussed wills, probate, and letters of administration on the third episode of the show. I enjoyed having those two ladies on the show as well. Cayman Islands Legal Assistant Clinic with facilitator and attorney Andrew Perkins. That was very informative. I had a really enjoyable time with Mr. Perkins. Her Excellency Governor Jane Owen giving us a close-up of herself and her role in the Cayman Islands as her, I do believe, second female governor. And what a thrill, what a joy it was to sit with Governor Owen. She is so pleasant, makes it very easy to engage and interact with her, and I enjoyed that immensely. It was a pleasure and a privilege, Governor Owen, to have you on the show. Attorney Jonathan Hughes of Sampson Law Associates was on also, and speaking on the areas of criminal law, particularly in arresting and summary and grand court procedures. Guys, that is definitely a show you want to hear, along with the show of wills, probate, and letters of administration. Then we had attorney Alistair David and Hillary Brooks of HSM Chambers speak on work permit applications and compliance with the pension and health insurance. That was another very popular show, and I can easily see why. It was very enlightening to have Alistair and Hillary on the show to speak on those topics. Today I decided to deviate from the usual show of having guests to discuss specific topic based on feedback and interaction I've been having with the community so far. And I want to take this show and give a background of who I am, but also to express the reason behind my decision to put on this show. I, of course, am Patricia Bryan, and I have been in the legal field for approximately 23 years. As time has gone by and the Cayman Islands have grown, no longer being the islands time has forgotten, in population and the assets that we have here in the islands to offer as attractions for people wanting to come to our islands has grown. I have also seen liability in the legal field expanded. Of course, we've seen the increase and growth of our judicial premises and judicial system. That's what happens with population growth. We've also seen the growth of technology, where the age of information is right at the tap of our fingertips. We're always on our cell phones, our mobile devices. Long gone are the heavy encyclopedias and dictionaries or going to the library to research. Now it's just a tap of our mobile devices or our TVs. Then we've also seen the introduction of human rights and modernization of our Constitution. All of these things, I believe, form the age of people becoming more aware of their rights, demanding more rights, and people wanting to be treated fair and just here in Cayman. And the keys to all of this is education and knowledge. For me, the key to education and knowledge is to know the law. And the reason for starting this show was to publicly educate, inform, and share knowledge. Inform and share knowledge of the law and the legal system and anything related to the law and the legal system. Mind you, that does not only include the court's office, the judicial system. It does not only include the police or enforcement. It does not only include politics or the parliament. Law plays a part of our everyday life. It is becoming more and more so in the climate of the Cayman Islands. I've seen it for quite a long time. And I thought that what best way to educate and inform and give knowledge to my people, the people of the Cayman Islands, and the residents of the Cayman Islands. And as a matter of fact, whoever may want to tune in but to this platform, thereby inviting guests to come on and speak about areas that I have found or I believe are relevant and will benefit listeners, but also to allow residents and the Caymanian people to dialogue on concerns. Though about doing the show, I wanted politicians, past, present, sitting government, opposing government, to be able to feel comfortable also to come on the show and speak of issues without any blatant blaming, and share with their constituents and the residents of the Cayman Islands their thoughts and intentions for the country and their districts, respectively. So, listeners, that's the gist of the show. That's the theme. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of legal topics, areas of the law that I would like to discuss on this show as the show progresses. For those that know me, this will be familiar, what I'm about to share. For those that don't know me, you'll find a bit about me in the next few minutes. I have always been a social advocate for as long as I can remember, and this is not my first time advocating for anything in the Cayman Islands or anywhere for that that reason. What started my interest in social issues was the environment in Cayman while I was growing up. What ignited the interest in law were two relevant positions in government at the time. It was during those tenures with those two government departments that I realized to what degree the law can make such a difference in people's lives. Negatively, but too in a positive way. There's nothing else in life, I believe, save for health issues and financial issues, that can be formative in someone's life. And by formative, I mean making people's lives better or making people's lives worse. Altering and changing people's lives for the best or for the worst. This, of course, listeners, excited me and ignited a passion to think I want to be able to make people's lives better in some way or form. And I did that, I think, through my work, my professional career in the legal system, because of the areas of the legal system that I choose to be employed in and involved with. I was instrumental in having the laws changed regarding maintenance and affiliation in the Cayman Islands because of personal experience, and advocated for legislative changes to the law back in 2004. A motion was presented on my behalf to the House back then, which passed unanimously on the first sitting. Oh, imagine my surprise to that, right? Ms. Carol Rinker was doing the reporting, and she took a copy of the motion, ran across the road to where I was working, and wrote on the motion telling me congratulations. I was very proud of that. That is one area of the law that I thought needed major overhaul because it differentiated between legitimate and illegitimate children, meaning children born in wedlock and out of wedlock. And I advocated for the same rights for both children on each side. That was very successful, and I am proud to say today that I had a lot to do with that. So you see, advocating, lobbying, caring, being passionate about social issues is nothing new to me. Just because I'm popping up now and deciding I want to do this show, right? I also advocated back then for changes in the landlord and tenant law. I can tell you I didn't finish high school, surprise to some, because at that time the Cayman Islands government were not allowing young parents to return to government schools. This has certainly changed. I am so proud to realize it's changed for quite a long time too, so that is great. That didn't, and I has not allowed that to stop me from doing something that my heart has always been set on and will always be set on, and that is advocating for the human and civil rights of anyone, anywhere, especially here in my native Cayman Islands. I've also advocated in a long arm fashion, meaning long arm fashion stretching across countries. And I want to touch on some areas of the law and some legal issues that drastically concerns me. Now, to the top of the list is, of course, sexual abuse and rape of children. And by children, I am referring to the lawful in the Cayman Islands, the age of consent is 16, but also sexual abuse and rape of women. And I would venture to say men too, because I'm learning that we do have some issues where men have been sexually taken advantage of. The sentencing guidelines on these issues are concerning to me also. I don't make the laws. I don't draft the laws, but I am concerned about the guidelines and the laws in and of themselves to a certain extent. Landlord tenancy issues, of course, is very dear to my heart too, and which I have recently been addressing also. The sentencing guidelines of some minor criminal offenses, I think those need to be revisited. The predatory, and I say this word, predatory practices of the housing and property market in the Cayman Islands, including, sorry to say guys, but planning, which is out marketing and seemingly unfavoring Caymanians. I just could not get around wording that any different, because it wouldn't hit the mark of what I was intending to address. All areas where our laws and acts need altering, and there are quite a few. And I am not saying that I am going to be attacking these areas, but I would like to see many of these addressed, modernized, and it will not happen overnight. But I know there's some other areas of the law that are constantly being updated, especially immigration and some other areas. So we'd like to see some of these other laws being modernized just as fast and quickly. But I do agree immigration is one of the strongest issues need addressing in our country right now, as of yesterday. So I support any changes in immigration as I shouldn't say any changes, but I support constantly reevaluating the changes to our immigration laws. I support perhaps revisiting the Caymanian protection laws in some sections, but that is not my expertise, and we have excuse me, members of our legal field who are addressing those. There are many other subject matters that I intend to cover on the show here, guys. Some fall into the public service, and which I had hoped arrangements would have been ironed out, as they are very important subject matters and of public interest. Regrettably, due to the show beginning in the summer break, many have been on vacation or time off. So I am hoping that that will come together pretty soon, and I can have some of the topics that fall under our public service servants. We will be able to get guests on the show talking about those areas. Well, I think I have said pretty much enough about me and the purpose of this show and what I intend or hope the show will serve its purpose in doing. As many of you know, September 8th, 2023 is Friday. What happens on September 8th? The deadline for submissions on the Sexual Harassment Bill, guys. Yes, that's what happens on September 8th. I do believe, if I remember correctly, this is the second phase. The committee wrapped up or is wrapping up 2 weeks. I think this week may also fall into it because I know Northside was postponed, and so was Kim and Bragg's. But they're wrapping up their meetings on both islands, so I think that will be done by Friday, hopefully, I guess. I must say sincerely, though, I was disappointed by the turnout in the Eastern Districts. Guys, we need to turn out for these meetings. We can't say we want change if something happens to someone. We can't say, well, why isn't the law in place for this, when we're not turning out to show our support. When our governments do pull the curtains aside and say, hey, we're going to address this. West Bay was not too disappointing. There was a significant turnout there, and it was a very engaging session, so kudos to West Bay. I didn't expect anything else, but I was still a bit disappointed. But to save face and give credit, feedback online has apparently been pretty satisfactory, so that is good. I encourage everyone who has not given feedback yet to do so in the next few days. Today's Monday, so you have until Friday. I don't think that they'll cut it off if you have feedback after Friday, but it's always good to get it in the time frame that they've given us. That way it can definitely count. If you think the landlord and tenancy law is needed like yesterday, and I highlighted important law in today's Cayman Islands rental market, this sexual harassment bill is of as much, if not of more significance. Actually, I do believe it is of more significance in a branch off. This law will change the face of how we are treated and engaged with on the job, at our residences if we rent, academic institutions, schools, I mean, you name it. This bill, listeners, is not a bill being proposed only for women or females. It is gender inclusive and covers all ages. I will just pull the bill here and have a look at it so I can tell you, give you an idea if you haven't read the bill. But I encourage everyone to get a copy of this bill, and if you're having a hard time understanding it, find someone who may be able to. I understand the MPs should be doing a good job at that. Some of whom I have spoken to seem to be very informed of the verbiage of the bill. So the bill covers employer and employee, so that's on the job, certain institutions. It also covers educational institutions, associations, organizations, employment agencies. Let me tell you, this bill covers a lot. So it's not just sexual harassment on the job, guys. You need to look at this bill. I so applaud the government for taking this step to do this. I will try to break down some parts of the bill or summarize just in case you haven't read it. In reading the bill, one thing I found missing that I think, and this is only my opinion, was the definition of sexual. So when I read the bill, for me, this word sexual, again, my own opinion, needs to be clearly defined in the bill, as is every other applicable word in the interpretation section of the bill. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just my feeling. Part 2, Section 3.3 sets out the types of sexual conduct. But again, there's no clear definition from what I can see of what the word sexual means. Sexual could mean different things in different cultures, and I feel if we clearly define sexual, the word sexual, anyone coming under the charge of this proposed act will be clear. Oxford Dictionary states sexual, relating to the instincts, physiological processes, and activities connected with physical attraction or intimate physical contact between individuals. Dictionary.com reads of, relating to, or for sex. On the government webpage on sexual harassment, the Cayman Islands government webpage, it states, sexual harassment is unwanted or unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature that is offensive, humiliating, or intimidating, or that creates a hostile environment. Guys, I hope you're listening to these words. This conduct, again, on the webpage goes on to say this conduct can be verbal, physical, or by gesticulation, offensive gestures, guys, that's what that big word means. It may be subtle or direct and can occur in person, face to face. Or, this is very important in this time, electronically / online, in audio, for the people who love to send around these voice messages, digital images, for those people who love to take videos and pictures of people or of themselves and share around to people unwanted or unsolicited, or written format. Disclaimer, the government's website does not say some of the other words that I just used. It expressly says electronically / online, in audio, digital images, or written format. I want to be clear. Anyone can, again, the webpage goes on to say, anyone can experience sexual harassment regardless of their gender, sex, social status. This is all very important, guys. Regardless of their gender, sex, social status, age, or other personal characteristics. Wikipedia's definition of sexual harassment is, sexual harassment is a type of harassing involving the use of explicit or implicit sexual overtones, including the unwelcome and inappropriate promises of rewards in exchange for sexual favors. Sexual harassment can either be physical or verbal, maybe even both. The website Rape Crisis England and Wales webpage defines sexual harassment as, sexual harassment is any unwanted sexual behavior that makes someone feel upset, scared, offended, or humiliated, or is meant to make them feel that way. Again, sexual harassment is any unwanted sexual behavior that makes someone feel upset, scared, offended, or humiliated, or is meant to make them feel that way. This becomes more interesting and detailed as I found on UNAtedNations.org website a page defining sexual harassment as, sexual harassment includes many things: actual or attempted rape or sexual assault, unwanted pressure for sexual favors. Guys, when I read this list, I was blown away. Unwanted deliberate touching, leaning over, cornering, or pinching. Does any of this sound familiar to you guys? Unwanted sexual looks or gestures. Definitely familiar stuff. Unwanted letters, telephone calls, or materials of a sexual nature. Unwanted pressure for dates. Unwanted, this is very common also, unwanted sexual teasing, jokes, remarks, or questions. Verbal sexual assault can be referring to an adult as a girl, a hunk, doll, babe, or honey, unwantedly. Whistling at someone, this is very common in our Caribbean culture. Cat calls, whatever that is. Sexual comments. Turning work discussions to sexual topics. Very common around here, I hear. Sexual innuendos or stories. Asking about sexual fantasies, preferences, or history. Personal questions about social or sexual life. Sexual comments about a person's clothing, very common again. Anatomy or looks. Anatomy means your body, guys, just in case Kissing sounds, howling, oh my gosh, just people, and smacking lips. That is very common also. This again is common, telling lies or spreading rumors about a person's personal sex life. Neck massage, oh my goodness. People love to offer neck massages. It is considered sexual harassment, people. Touching an employee's clothing, hair, or body. Giving personal gifts. Hanging around a person. Hugging. Kissing or stroking. Touching or rubbing oneself sexually around another person. That's not only sexual harassment, guys. That's another charge in the Cayman Islands Penal Code, I believe it is. Indecent exposure. Well, not so much, but anyway, we won't get into that. Standing close or brushing up against a person. This is very common. Nonverbal sexual harassment is looking a person up and down elevator aisles as though you just want to take their clothes off. Staring at someone, sexually suggestive signals, facial expressions, winking, which is another common thing, throwing kisses or licking lips, making sexual gestures with hands or through body movements. Physical indications of sexual harassment is giving a massage around the neck or shoulders, touching the person's clothing, hair, or body, hugging, kissing, patting, or stroking, touching or rubbing oneself sexually around another person, standing close or brushing up against another person. I wanted to share these examples in order to give our listeners, in layman terms, everyday scenarios of what sexual harassment may and can look like. The bill that the government is proposing is pretty slim in my view, but as discussed with the moderators of the meeting, we all agree we must start somewhere. And I think the bill is doing good so far, and I anticipate that it will probably gain another few pages once the consultation period has passed. Amendments are always the option in this proposal, as this proposal bill becomes an act, and the need to add more protections after it's implemented. Now, we know this process takes a while. We know it takes a while. It will not be passed and go into place in a few months. It could potentially take up to a year. There's things that has to be put in place as once the bill has passed and is enacted, and that process takes time. We expect, or I would hope, that it can be in place by the time election comes around. It will be good for any of our MPs who supports this bill, and I do believe just about everyone is supporting this bill, because it will affect everyone of all ages across the scope of the anyone who lives and works and is in the Cayman Islands. This is going to affect. There's a Gender Equality Act. There are certain offenses under the Penal Code, but this bill will specifically address, as the government describes it, as a standalone act or law. If you need a copy, download it at www.gov.ky/sexual harassment. There are also social media pages. I think it's Facebook, Instagram. I can't remember what other social media pages, and of course the government website. You can also reach out to your MPs or ministers. I'm sure they can get you a copy, and as I said previously, to help you to better understand the bill, and maybe even take some of your suggestions or recommendations for the consultation period. Or if you want, you can message me for a copy. I have it and I've shared it around, so I definitely am able to share a hard copy with you. I'm not sure, one suggestion I made was for MPs to have it in hard copy at their offices. Also to share it by WhatsApp for their constituents or anyone they have WhatsApp with, or also for our local libraries to have a few copies on hand, or to offer a free charge of printing this off if anyone was interested in having it printed at the library in case they didn't have a printer. So going back to the actual bill itself now, quickly. Well, when I say quickly, it's never really quickly, but anyway, it is a Sexual Harassment Bill 2023, a bill for an act to provide for the prevention of sexual harassment and for incidental and connected purposes. Now, in Part 2, Protection from Sexual Harassment, it goes on to highlight some of the conduct that this bill would include, and that is making an unwanted sexual advance towards a person, making an unwelcome sexual comment to a person, making an unwelcome sexual comment about a person in their sight and hearing. Guys, I hope you're listening to this. Making an unwelcome sexual gesture to a person, providing a person with unwelcome sexual images or graphics, making it appear to a person seeking employment that the offer of employment or the terms of employment are contingent on the person's acceptance of sexual advances, making it appear that a person will receive preferential treatment or other advantage in the employment context only if that person submits to sexual harassment, and directly or indirectly engaging in any other form of unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. Now, if you heard these sections, this covers just about everywhere. We're not only talking about sexual harassment on the job, again, I said that a few minutes ago, but we're just talking about sexual harassment on a whole. Employers will have to formulate a policy statement concerning sexual harassment in the workplace. I won't get into that too much because that will be something for the government to deal with. Going back to the other area that I thought was interesting, it also covers employees of educational institutions. Sexual harassment complaints made to the Gender Equality Board. I understand the Gender Equality Tribunal will be handling the complaints under this sexual harassment bill. And we go to interpretation. Now, place, it covers places, which includes a ship, aircraft, vehicle, or a public or private place, meaning a building. Relationship status means a person's status of or condition of being single. So it doesn't matter if you're single, married but living separately or apart from one spouse, party to a civil partnership, whether you're divorced, widowed, or a person who, although not married to another person, is living with the second mentioned person in an intimate or cohabitational relationship in the same household. You hear that? Two people that aren't married but living together, someone can complain of being sexually harassed even though they're in a relationship, intimate cohabitational relationship in the same household, or is in a visiting relationship with the second mentioned person. That is pretty interesting. Guys, this bill is broad. This bill is very broad. Commission of an act of sexual harassment. A person commits an act of sexual harassment against another person if having regards to all the circumstances referred to in Section 2, and those were the circumstances that I named out. And when I said making an unwelcome sexual advances towards a person. Now, some of the institutions covered in this bill includes a place for the care of minors and includes boarding homes, group homes, foster homes, residential care homes, children's homes, nursing homes, or other place for the custody of the elderly and differently abled. You guys listening to that again? Institutions that this bill covers includes a place for the care of minors and includes a boarding home, group home, foster home, residential care home, children's home, nursing home, or other places for the care and custody of the elderly and differently abled, a prison or correctional facility, medical treatment, wellness, or psychiatric facility. This bill is protecting our underage minors, our elderly, our disabled, or imprisoned and mentally, psychologically challenged persons. So that means you cannot sexually harass any of these people and think that it is okay. You can be charged if this bill becomes law, and it will. So, landlords, this is very interesting also. Landlords and tenants. This bill covers much to do with landlords and tenants. I would propose everyone gets a copy of this act when it becomes an act, especially landlord and tenants and employees. Educational institutions include school, college, university, vocational training body, or any other institutions at which education or training is provided to a student. Employment agencies. This bill, now that I'm talking about this over the ear, this bill is really inclusive for being what? Let me see, it's 36 pages. It's responding to services that I am just looking through it here again to make sure I am covering all the areas that I want to cover. So, employers are liable for an act of sexual harassment committed by the employer's employees and agents. And it goes on to tell you only if person who is in charge of an institution has liability also. I'm just briefly touching on these. Educational institutions, a person who is in charge of an educational institution, there's liabilities for whoever's in charge of those institutions, associations, organizations, employment agencies. A person who operates an employment agency or an employee of an employment agency shall not sexually harass another person in the course of providing or offering to provide any of the agency's service to that person. Oh my goodness. Accommodation. A landlord shall not sexually harass a tenant of the landlord. A tenant shall not sexually harass the landlord of the tenant. Real or property shall not sexually harass it. Real or personal property. A person shall not sexually harass another person in the course of transactions with that other person in relation to the selling of or offering to sell real or personal property. Real property means real estate, guys. To the second mentioned person, acquiring or offering to acquire real or personal property from the second. Personal property could mean cars, furniture, anything that is movable, that it's not fixed. I'm trying to remember my real property studies now, but real property is land or homes which are permanently in place, if I'm wording that properly, and personal property is anything that is transferable or movable or can be, picked up and transported or moved to somewhere else. Right now my verbiage is not where it should be. General professional relationships, there's obligations there also. Victimization as a result of a complaint. A person shall not subject or threaten to subject another person to any detriment. That means any threats of repercussions on the ground that the second mentioned person, that means the person who has complained, has made or proposes to make a complaint under this act. So no one should be threatening someone else if that someone else says, hey, I'm going to make a complaint on you for sexual harassment. That's against the law also, just in case some people may not know. And pressure to engage in sexual harassment. Sexual harassment complaints made to the Gender Equality Tribunal. Person who alleges that the person has been subjected to sexual harassment, or another person is engaging in or has engaged in sexual harassment, may, in the form approved by the tribunal, file a written complaint with the tribunal setting out the details of the alleged sexual harassment. I won't get into that too much, but one thing I had a concern about, I'm not sure if I should just get into that on the show, but the specified time period. I didn't see a specified time period set out here in the Sexual Harassment Bill. It's just saying within a specified time period, and I did address my concern that there should be a specified time period set in the bill, because we don't want having an overreach of power with giving specified times, but that isn't something to get into. We talk about remuneration expenses, protection from liability, appeal, some other legal verbiage here that I won't get into because I'll have to start explaining all of that. And it gives an example of the makeup of the sexual harassment proposal, a sexual harassment policy. So it sets out at the back of the bill what any sexual harassment policy used by any employer or landlord or institution or whatever, what that policy should look like, the wording of that policy, that law enforcement and the government expects the policy to look like. So when you draft up a policy and you give it to your employees or employers or whoever else, you have it on hand to show at any time. This schedule at the back of the bill is what it is expected to look like, and it is pretty extensive. I'm glad to see. I mean, they honestly put a lot of time into this bill. I'm not sure how much they may have to add, before they conclusively take it before the Parliament or Cabinet. It talks about confidentiality agreement, standard of proof. You have up until, they're suggesting a period of up until 18 months. Where did I see that? To make a complaint, and it could be, complaint can be made from the very first incident, as well as a complaint can be made after numerous incidents, but the date of the last incident is what would necessarily be taken into consideration. I don't necessarily agree to that, but when it was explained to me, it made a lot of sense in a manner of speaking. There were some questions I had, but all in all, I think this bill is put together very well. I applaud the drafters, and I want to give a shout out to Miss Tammy and oh my gosh, I can't remember the other lady's name. She's going to kill me, for the hosting of the meetings around the districts. That's very, they invested a lot of time into that. And so they had a frequently asked questions paper put together, which, pretty much summarized the paper and answered potential questions. So it says, are churches and charitable organizations exempt from having a policy for its employees or volunteers? No. Does the proposed bill apply to street or public harassment? No. Guys, that's the only thing that this bill will not cover. If someone harasses you on the street or in public. So meaning, publicly, if someone is harassing you, I would move into a building if you can. Get into a place where there may be witnesses, because it's hard. My figuring of why this part was not included in the bill, because it's hard to prove some sort of harassment if you're on the street or publicly, unless there is an exclusive witness. But of course the bill does not apply to the street or public harassment. However, it still prohibits a person offering a service or goods to members of the public to sexually harass a customer or client. Does one incident count as sexual harassment? Yes. Can't I joke with my coworkers anymore? That's a question that's up in the air. So sexual harassment encompasses a wide range of inappropriate, unwelcome, and unwanted conduct or acts. So you must see clause 3, again, 3(a). And if the jokes is of sexual nature, it can be considered sexual harassment. It is how the other person receives the act, right? Or the conduct. Does the proposed bill cover social media, digital electronics? We heard that it does. Electronic methods of sexual harassment, yes, because this is very, very common. Sending, transmitting, or provided any unwelcome electronic messages with sexual content. That includes sexual images, voice messages, or graphics. Audio of a sexual nature is prohibited. Why does the relationship between the person alleging sexual harassment and the person who is alleged to have engaged in the act of sexual harassment matter? I mean, it has to matter in order for it to constitute a conduct or an act. Abuse is often a matter of power and control. That is so true. So the relationship has to be considered. Are employees of individuals, this is important. Example, domestic helpers, caregivers, landscapers, etc., also required to issue a sexual harassment policy statement? Yes. Big resounding yes. For all those business holders or those people who employ domestic helpers, caregivers, and the landscapers, you have to get this policy statement in place to give your employees when this bill becomes an act and it is finalized and put in place. You can't say you didn't hear it here. There will be more opportunities for the word to be given by the government in these circumstances of household employment. Who can an employee go to report their employee if they are subjected to sexual harassment? Department of Labor and Pensions. Is there a time period to make a complaint? Yes. Again, we go back to that stipulated time period of 18 months from the date of the alleged act of sexual harassment to which the complaint relates. It's asking, will employers be provided with a policy template? Yes, that template is the document I just referred to. That's at the end of the bill. And will the legislation come into effect immediately? Again, no. Like I said earlier, I was told, of course, an appropriate period to allow preparation will be allowed prior to the commencement date. So there's things that has to be put in place. And the claims of sexual harassment will be investigated by the officers of the Department of Labor and Pensions and will be submitted to the Gender Equality Tribunal. So again, these incidents can be reported to the Department of Labor and Pensions. Guys, penalties There are many penalties put out here. Let me see if I have a few minutes to mention some of these penalties so people can know. Consequently, the tribunal may make any one or more of the following orders. They can say that the respondent does not repeat or continue the sexual act. So the tribunal can make one or more of the following orders. That the respondent, that means the person who has committed the act, does not repeat or continue the sexual harassment. That the respondent shall perform any reasonable act or course of conduct to redress any loss or damage suffered by the complainant. So the person that is being complained against shall perform, if ordered by the tribunal, is any reasonable act or course of conduct, whatever the tribunal finds as a reasonable act or course of conduct that will help to address any loss or damage suffered by the complainant, the person who has made the complaint. That the respondent shall pay damages to the complainant by way of compensation not exceeding $20,000. You hear that? You could potentially be fined up to $20,000 for any loss or damage suffered by reason of the conduct of you, the respondent, the person who the complaint is being made against. That where the complaint relates to sexual harassment by a fellow employee, that means you both work together, that the employer shall take appropriate action to ensure that the sexual harassment ceases and to report to the tribunal within a specified time period on the action taken. I still don't like that specified time period. I think there should be a specific time period stuck in there in order for employers to know this has to be done by a specified time. That the respondent pay the legal fees and any other cost of the complainant not exceeding $10,000. That the complainant pays the cost incurred by the tribunal and those of the respondent not exceeding $10,000 if the tribunal finds that the complainant's actions are frivolous or vexatious. So if you make a false complaint and the tribunal finds that you made a false complaint, meaning frivolous or vexatious, then the tribunal could order that you who made the complaint pays the cost incurred by them and those of the person that you made the complaint against. Don't think this is one-sided. That it would be inappropriate for any further action to be taken in the matter or any other order or declaration as may be appropriate, having regard to all circumstances surrounding the complaint. Or last, they can just simply dismiss the complaint. Guys, that kind of sums up the sexual harassment bill that's now in consultation. I think it's a very good bill. Again, I've said that a few times. They've covered quite a lot in the bill, and I look forward to what they're going to come back and let us know that has been happening with this consultation period. I am super excited by this. You can't imagine. There's another bill that there's another legislation that I am super excited about, but I won't get into that right now. But I think everyone hopefully will be pleased. The month of September is already filled with shows of more exciting topics and subjects and in the legal arena. So next Monday's show will feature attorney Pramod Joshi, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, of McGrath Toner, and parent practitioner Miss Miles Ruby, I always get her name backwards, of the Legal Befrienders Club. And the Legal Befrienders is another awesome free legal clinic for residents of the Cayman Islands. You will not want to miss this show either. If there are any lawyers, organizations, businesses which feel their subject matter could fall under a legal spectrum or any areas of the law that they may want to cover, please reach out. If you want to be a guest on the show, contact me on legaltalkwithpatricia@outlook.com or 922-5086 or 939-0796, or send me a message on one of the social media accounts, Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan, on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. Thank you for tuning in again to another episode today. and every Monday at 5 p.m. on Bobo 89.1 FM radio station. Listen in online. I find that people find the station much easier if I say dmsbroadcasting.ky, and they can select from the list of stations there. At the bottom is Bobo 89.1 icon. Also, let me remind you, like or follow social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube of Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan. I love that people are adding and following my personal pages or telling me about the show in person or on WhatsApp. But there are prettier images on the show's pages, so like and follow those also, please. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. www.judicial.gov.ky and www.legislation.gov.ky are two, I won't even say valuable, invaluable sites to learn about the Judicial Department and the courts, including your next court dates, legal aid, and other services, where to find a lawyer, and where to find the governing legislation, including proposed bills, passed laws, or acts of the islands. Remember to be safe, stay legal, be informed, and know your rights. Once again, find a nonprofit of your choice, donate either some funds or some time. I know they're now called One-to-One, which previously was Big Brothers Big Sisters. I love that organization. I love it. There's also, I think it's the Heart organization. There's another that does Grief Share. I can't remember the name of that now. There's the Women's Domestic, my words fail me. There's a Women Domestic Shelter or something of that effect. Please, guys, there's the Humane Society with the animals. I love the Humane Society. There's no shortage of nonprofits in Cayman that needs your support, so please find one and do something worthy. Thank you very much again for listening to Legal Talk with Patricia Bryan this evening, and see you this time next week. Have a great evening.